Good morning to you. I am Cal Cagno. Hope you're doing well. What's your plans for tonight? Are you going to the sold out show with 80NX with Andrew McMahon at the Majestic? If you aren't, we will have some tickets for you. Give you info on that after we talk to the man himself in studio, live in person. Andrew McMahon, thanks for being here, man. We appreciate you being here this morning.
Thanks for having me, man.
Let's talk about your career, man. We'll start at the beginning, man. Where most of us found out about you was, of course, Something Corporate. Something Corporate meant so much to so many people, and I know it still does. These were your friends from high school. You guys started this band together. Is this right?
These were like the guys that I was in Spanish class with. So, yeah.
Do you still hablo a little bit?
I don't hablo as much as I used to, but ever since it got harder to get across the Mexican border, I started habloing less. But
it's interesting though that you guys won the Battle of the Bands, because the funny part of that story would have been if you got beat out by like a hip hop dance group of all white kids.
Well, the funny bullet point is, so there was like our high school Battle of the Bands, and then there was like the district wide Battle of the Bands. And at the district-wide Battle of the Bands, we did get beat by what would you call it? The guys who did like Zoot Suit Ride. It was like a swing band.
Oh, yeah.
It was like when swing was really popular, and there was this band called the Maybe Daydreams, and the kid in that band actually like went on to be in movies and stuff. So I guess he did have us licked in some respect. But
yeah, but it's funny that you remember this after all these years.
Oh yeah, I was pissed. I was furious. I was totally furious.
All right, so Something Corporate, you're doing that. Then you decided to do something called Jack's Mannequin. The reason I say something called that, because it was just you. It was a solo project, and again, it means a lot to a lot of people. When we have people that legitimately, when we put these tickets on sale, they were free. They sold out in 15 minutes. We sold that many, because that many people are that into it, and it's something that you sort of strike a chord with people. What was different about Jack's Mannequin, in your opinion, as Jack's Mannequin versus Something Corporate?
A lot of the themes, in a sense, were the same. I mean, the approach, at least for me from a writing standpoint, like that's how I wrote a lot of those songs, was just sitting in my room with the piano and writing music. The biggest change, I think, was just the approach to the recording, and you go from being in a place where you have your bandmates there and you just get in a room and duke it out, and it does become, it's not always competitive like that, but as you do it more and it becomes a business and you're in a band with guys for long enough, sometimes that becomes a little trickier. And I think with Jax, I was just looking for, in some ways, a path of least resistance, but I really wanted the studio experience to be an experiment and just be fun. And so the first record was myself and my producer, a guy named Jim Wirt, who had done the Something Corporate Records with me. And I'd show up in the studio with a song, and we would just like, we didn't have anything for that first record, so we would find like live drum loops and cut those up, and then Jim, even though he didn't really play guitar, would play guitar. He was a badass bass player though. So I played piano, he played bass. We cut drums up, sing, and eventually we brought in Bobby, who played in the band for the duration, and he put guitars down on a bunch of those songs. And Tommy Lee came in and played the drums. It was a party. I mean, that was what Jax was to me, and it was a party that lasted a good decade.
Yeah, you had a good run for that party.
Yeah. But yeah, I think a lot of it was just that, a new time in my life. I was going, Something Corporate was like high school, kind of like getting out of high school and sort of trying to figure out how to be like, independent in the world and whatever. And Jax was really about like, okay, now I can own this a little bit, and it was a lot of it was just about getting into trouble, I suppose.
We're talking to Andrew McMahon doing a sold out show with 80NX tonight at the Majestic. Now, I want to talk about Tommy Lee for a second, because when I saw that he was the narrator on your documentary that came out a few years back, how in the Dear Jack, by the way, is the name of it. How in the world do you even know Tommy Lee? Can you walk me through this real quick?
It's easy. I mean, at the time that basically through the second Something Corporate record up to the second Jax record, I was managed by a guy named Carl Stubner, awesome dude, and he managed Tommy.
There it is.
I mean, plain and simple. And Tommy, you do the thing, this working at a radio station, when you work in this business and you walk into like a record label or whatever, it's like you want to hit the swag bin. You get new albums and whatever you can get, your DVDs, whatever you can get your hands on. And Tommy one day went through the bin and grabbed a Something Corporate record, and he was really into the second Something Corporate album, North. He loved, there was a song on the record called Me and the Moon that he fell in love with, and he was writing his record, Tommy Land the Ride. He was doing kind of like artist collaborations. And he called me one day out of the blue while I was working on everything in transit. And he was like, dude, he's so awesome. He's like the classic, like he's just the surfer. He's amazing, and he was like, I love Me and the Moon, and I want to write a song with you. I have this song I'm working on. I think you'd be perfect to help me finish it. And I was like, dude, let's do it.
Yeah.
And we became boys. Like I ended up writing 3 songs with him on his record that he put out, and we became really tight in that time. And he came in and played on Everything in Transit, and sat in with us for a show, and then when I got sick, he was really there for me. He would call and he'd come by the hospital, and he was really good to me. And so I asked if he'd narrate it, because he has that. His voice is just like,
it's recognizable, but he also does a really nice job with doing that sort of thing. I've heard him do different things, and I've actually seen the documentary. It's called Dear Jack. Now I want to talk. Let's jump back for a second to when you were diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic
or lymphocytic,
leukemia. Basically leukemia, 2005. How scared were you at that point? I mean, was it to the point that the doctor said, hey, you've got, it's this stage, or is it like, okay, we're going to beat this because we're young?
Neither really. Leukemia is not a staged cancer. At least the leukemia that I had, it's basically you have it or you don't. And it's a cancer of the bone marrow. So basically, what processes all of your blood, your bone marrow, if it's infected, or if it's if it's not working, basically everything in your body, all that your body runs on this blood, isn't working. And so that was the deal. And it's not a great diagnosis for sure. It's not something you want to hear. But certainly, having being young and being strong, there are advantages, but there are also these huge disadvantages, which is why I started the foundation, the Dear Jack Foundation, which is when, young adults, ages 15 to 39 diagnosed with cancer have seen less of an improvement in their survival rates than any other demographic of cancer patient in 30 years. And so you learn a lot of these things while you're in the hospital. For me, I wasn't totally terrified. It was really surreal, and you go into shock, and I just kind of battened down the hatches and surrounded myself with my friends and my family, and we just kind of went to war on it.
And you beat it.
And I beat it.
Good for you. Congratulations on that. That's huge. Now let's fast forward to today. Andrew McMahon in the Wilderness. The new record is out. You're doing the show tonight. What is different about this versus Jack's Mannequin versus something corporate? I know they're all, obviously they feature you, so there's a bit of a similarity. What's different in your opinion about this band?
Well, it's interesting, because I think, it's a fair question about like the what's different, and I think like immediately you can point sonically. There's a certain freedom to experiment that goes along with just putting your name on something and saying like, look, like at the end of the day, I have to own this, and so I'm gonna make it my experiment, and so I had a lot of fun. We stripped the guitars out of the record and really made it about how do we take the tools in the studio, that I can play with two hands, that I can play and still get that energy and still make it powerful. And so there's a lot of experiment with synths and programming and things that I've done throughout a lot of my records, but I think I took a little bit more I took a little more of the reins in that respect and like dug into that. But I think for me, it's more about all these projects. The biggest difference is just the time of my life that I'm living when I write them. I don't aim to like. It's not like this has to be different than Jack's Mannequin, or this has to be different than something corporate. I think just by virtue of growing and living a new life and trying to keep moving into the future and being influenced by different music, and listening to different things at the time that I make these records, they take on a different life, and hopefully one that's modern and feels like something that stands up next to the best records that are coming out at the time, and that's my goal really.